Good afternoon, Santa Clarita, on a rather cloudy day. Spring sprung and then has unsprung. We actually have rain in the forecast tomorrow. So, but it's nice and cool, and you've got plenty of time to relax and to listen to On the Legal Line. Our phone number, and please write this down, is 661-298-5487. 661-298-KHTS. And my guest today is a repeat because he was so popular last time on a topic that I think is of considerable interest to not only the working population in our listening audience, but also to the employer population, and that is employment use of independent contractors, the do's and the don'ts, and what happens if you're wrong. And that's that's what we're going to be talking about today. And my guest, as I said, is Dick Block. He is a renowned tax and estate planning lawyer. Last time we had Dick on, he did estate planning, which I think was great, and we got a lot of good feedback on that. But today, he's going into his specialty, which is tax law. And before we get to Dick, as we're approaching the summer recess of Congress, might be a good time to kind of get the lay of the land in Washington and what's happening, what's in the news. I refer to the news today as the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus may have closed, but it's been replaced by CNN and Fox News with what's happening with the president and who knew what when. As I've said before on this show, I was around for Watergate, and this, unfortunately, is looking all too familiar. And it'll be interesting to see, as I've stated, my own opinion is at the end of the day, the Republicans will likely, in order to keep control of both houses of Congress in the 2018 elections, I think will abandon the Trump bandwagon if more and more stuff comes out. I hope I'm wrong as far as more and more stuff comes out, but unfortunately, based on what I've seen so far, it is going to come out, and it's not going to be pleasant. The other interesting thing is health care. We've been talking about it. My prediction all along has been it's a mess now. It's going to remain a mess. The Congressional Budget Office just came out with its figures analyzing the bill passed by the Republicans in the House, and we wind up with 23 million people who now have coverage not having coverage, which means they're going to be mad at somebody. And who are they going to be mad at? The people they view as taking their coverage away. And who will that be? And that will be the Congress that voted it. So you've got that, which means that we're going to have gridlock on the healthcare situation. And you've also got, whatever they do, how are they going to pay for it? Because Mr. Trump has promised us tax reform of some sort. He's got his plan. But overall, it's going to mean less money coming in. Well, if you've got less money coming in, how are you going to pay for those 23 million people that you're proposing to take away their health care? So it's going to be a fun time between now and 2018. As to who the FBI director should be, I don't know. My guess is that they will pick a respected former federal judge. The name that's been actively bandied about recently is Merrick Garland, who, remember him, was the Supreme Court nominee of the Obama administration, who never even got so much as an interview, except by the media. So it'll be very, very interesting to see what happens there. Dick, you have any thoughts on the healthcare dilemma as to what they're going to do?
Well, I think the Republicans are going to in Congress and in the Senate, particularly in the Senate, which is preparing its own separate bill, will back off very significantly the reduction in coverage, and probably will have to modify the president's proposals on tax reform to at least preserve some of the funds that are necessary to fund the existing health care benefits.
Do you know, and I don't, I should have looked this up before I came on the air, but I didn't. Have they got any estimates as to how long, because this is the Obamacare money is coming out of the so-called Medicare fund, isn't it?
It is, and the estimates I've seen for when Medicare will be insolvent is about 2028.
Well, I'm in my late 60s, so I can look forward to having to get my own health insurance in my golden years.
Well, it's okay for you because you're a wealthy man.
Absolutely.
But I'm just a poor journeyman tax lawyer.
Oh, right, sure. Who's voted one of LA's super lawyers? So the only reason you're poor is you don't charge enough. As I keep telling you, you can charge all your other clients a higher rate except for me.
Oh, okay. And, of course, people who respond to our conversation on this radio program.
Absolutely. Speaking of radio programs, remember, we welcome your phone calls. The number is 661-298-5487. And today's topic is a popular one for us, because it's a popular thing that people do because it's the easiest thing to do. And that is, when you have somebody doing some work for you, you don't make them an employee, you make them an independent contractor, because then all you have to do, in your view, as an employer or a contractor, is to write them a check, send them a 1099 in January, and you're done with it. And, you feel really part of the system because you send your 1099 sheet in. I forget the name of the form. Dick can tell us what it is.
1099 MISC. But there's one more thing you have to do for the Franchise Tax Board.
And what is that?
When you're paying an individual as an independent contractor, the obligation to file a 1099 arises when the compensation is $600 or more. There's also a Form 542, DE 542, that the employer is supposed to send to the Franchise Tax Board within 20 days after the compensation hits $600. I've never had a question from a client about that, and I doubt that the FTB or the Employment Development Department gets many 542s. The problem, Dennis, is that the employee, or the worker, if you will, doesn't mind being treated as an independent contractor, of course, until tax time, because he gets his gross pay rather than reduced by all the withholding. The employer likes it, of course, as you've mentioned, because it's much easier in terms of filling out forms and segregating dollars. But in my experience, the real reason the employer likes to treat the worker as an independent contractor is that many employers, unfortunately, in my experience, withhold on the worker just as if he were an employee, but then put the money in their pocket or apply it to paying other creditors. It's a nice thing or an easy thing to do when money gets a little tight, and that is when you have a situation where the 1099 gets reported, and the worker says, "Wait, you've taken all this money out of my paycheck," and that is where the legal fund begins.
Now, let's say we have such a bad faith employer who tells you you're an employee, treats you like an independent contractor, withholds the money and pockets it. What happens to that company?
The penalties. Well, let me go back a second. The one area, perhaps aside from foreign investments, where the IRS comes down most heavily is on unpaid employment taxes. First of all, in the arena of simple errors. The bookkeeper takes sick, and you as the employer don't get around to paying your taxes on time. The penalties start off at 5% per month, up to 25% for late filing, and 0.5% per month, up to 25% for late payment. But there is a penalty under Internal Revenue Code 6672 called the trust fund recovery penalty, because the taxes that are withheld or should have been withheld are considered in a trust fund, a constructive trust, as we lawyers say, for the Internal Revenue Service. And the employer, individual or company, or the individuals working for the company can be held personally liable for 100% of those trust fund penalties. That is the withheld income tax and the employer's share of the Social Security tax, which is a 1/2 share, and the Medicare tax. And the people who are responsible are called responsible persons. To be a responsible person, you have to have either control over writing the checks to decide who gets paid, other creditors or Uncle Sam, or be in a position where you know that the employment taxes have not been paid. So that is a requirement of willfulness. The other requirement is that you have, well, as I said, knowledge of the unpayment of the tax. So if you are in that category, Uncle Sam can come and collect all of those unpaid taxes from you as an individual. And they can garnish whatever income you have and take whatever property you have. As a matter of fact, I was reading yesterday that there was a recent case in the Third Circuit, the Circuit Court of Appeals, just below the United States Supreme Court, that held that an individual who failed to pay employment taxes and was a responsible officer, the IRS could take his home, his residence, and sell it and apply the proceeds to the taxes. But, Dennis, that's not all. Under Internal Revenue Code Section 7202, failure to withhold and pay over taxes is a crime, and it is a felony. And under current law, if the crime is committed by an individual, he can be subject to a fine of up to $250,000 or a jail term of 5 years, or both. If the malfeasor is a corporation, the $250,000 gets kicked up to $500,000. So the IRS is really serious about collecting employment taxes.
No, I can believe that. And I was not aware that there was as much of what you've just described going on as you state that there is. But I guess when times are tight and you've got money sitting there in a bank account and some creditor is breathing down your neck, the temptation can be awfully, awfully great. But it ain't worth it. So, well, right now we are going to take a break. We'll be back talking about more horror stories about what happens if you misclassify somebody, or even worse, if you decide to tell them they're being treated like an employee and abscond with the money. You're listening to KHTS. Get your pencil down. Get your pencil out and write down this number, 661-298-5487, and make sure you give us a call if you've got any questions. And we'll be back after these words.